Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Live with Marketers, the first live broadcasted show for marketers by marketers, morning talk show here at LinkedIn, broadcasted from our Sunnyvale studio. We're super excited that everyone is tuned in today to talk about social media. So we've had a blast the last couple episodes talking about the millennial mindset. We've talked about finding ROI and how the LinkedIn marketing team finds ROI and how we solve for that. But today we're going to talk about social media because that's what everyone said that they wanted to hear about. Is it just cat videos? Is it just dog videos? Are people just wasting time? We're going to find out today. So I'm Alex Rinn. I'm a content marketing manager at LinkedIn. I've been at LinkedIn for 3 years. I've been creating content to help people just better understand how to use our platform, how to use our products, and then also how to achieve their goals as marketers. A couple of housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our guests here. The audio stream comes through your speakers, and there's no dial-in. You want to make sure you save your questions for the end. We're going to have a live Q&A. Save about 10 minutes at the end for the Q&A, and you can submit your questions through the console. And then we're also going to share the slides at the end and the recording as well. So in case you have to go to the bathroom or you're trying to get a quick snap of one of my slides, we're going to send it afterwards, so no worries. So I want to introduce my guests here. Thank you so much for being here. We have Coca Sexton from Hootsuite, Steve Kearns from LinkedIn. I'd love for each of you guys to please introduce yourself and share something that is not on your LinkedIn profile.
So my name is Coca Sexton. I am an industry principal at Hootsuite. I basically help out our largest customers develop social strategies, specifically, context of this webinar or this live stream for driving ROI from social. One thing that is not on my LinkedIn profile, many years ago, I was a private investigator. So my job was to basically get into a car and follow people all around the Bay Area and try and catch them doing bad things.
That's so cool.
Yep. Easy segue to social media, right?
Yeah, it was a great transition.
There you go. You were tracking people then, you're tracking people now.
Yeah, different ways, yes.
Great. So my name is Steve Kearns. As Alex said, I am the social media lead at LinkedIn Sales and Marketing Solutions. So if you follow at LinkedIn Selling, at LinkedIn Marketing on Twitter or Instagram, or LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and LinkedIn Sales Solutions on LinkedIn, chances are those comms are going to be coming from me or one of my team members around the globe. And then in terms of what's not on my LinkedIn profile, I used to do a lot of musical theater, and I sang a lot in college and high school, and I was actually the teen angel in Grease, in my high school production of Grease. So that's the guy who flies in from the ceiling and sings Beauty School Dropout. So.
Awesome. I would make you give us a little preview, but I don't want to make you do that on live air. So maybe if we have some time afterwards.
But he was singing in the back, and it was glorious, everyone.
Oh, man.
There's your follow-up webinar.
Yeah, you have to take Coca's word for it on that one, I guess. All right, so moving into our agenda, we're going to talk about why you should be on social media, because as we know, if you're not on social media, your competitors are, so you want to make sure you have a good presence. Talk about scheduling tools and how teams that are maybe smaller source content. Mapping content to objectives, measuring success, and optimizing ROI. And then I'm going to have each of our guests here share a campaign example of a campaign that they did that was very successful on social. Finally, we're going to end with a just for fun, kind of like a fire drill of questions for our guests here to get to know them a little bit better. And then, of course, the live Q&A for everyone at the end. But first, I want to kick it back to everyone watching and ask, why did you tune in today? We just want to better understand who's here so that we can serve your needs and hopefully answer your questions, and you can walk away with more tips and tools. So your options are, A, I'm new at this whole social media thing. B, I'm a social media marketing manager looking for new tools and tips. C, I'm not a social media marketing manager, but I'm just curious, want to understand the landscape better. Or D, I'm actually hiring for a social media position, so I want to better understand the attributes of someone that I should be hiring. And we'll give you a couple of seconds to respond. Do we have any predictions? What do you guys think?
Well, as a social media manager myself, I'm hoping that a bunch of people just like me are watching this webinar so I can provide them with some helpful tips. So fingers crossed for my social managers out there.
I'm really interested to find out how much of a percentage of these individuals are just trying to figure out the landscape, that they're not actually in a role with this yet, because I see the trends moving in the space. So seeing how many people are actually just interested.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's check it out. It looks like 41% are social media managers, which is awesome. And then a close second is people just curious to understand.
Nice.
Cool. So you guys,
You win.
Yeah, I mean, it was close.
love
It was
winning.
close, though. Good stuff. Well, we're glad that you tuned in. As I said, we're going to talk about social media. So is it just about cats flying through space on burritos, or does it actually have value? We know that 79% of marketers have found value on LinkedIn. So I wanted to kind of kick it to you guys now. With all the misconceptions about social media, people are worried that maybe their employees are just wasting time on the platforms. Why do you think that companies should be investing time on social media? I'll give that one to Steve first.
Absolutely. Well, it's important for brands to spend time where their audiences are spending their time. And we find time and time again that is going to be on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. People are really going to be investing time in those platforms, and they want to communicate with brands through that way, especially with millennials. I know there's a stat floating around out there that says that 1/3 of millennials actually prefer to communicate with businesses via social media. So not email, they don't want to go to something in person. They want to have a two-way conversation with people, over these social media channels. So I think that, in order to kind of promote your brand and say, hey, we're out here, that requires a significant presence on social.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is that you have to be on social.
Yep.
I mean, that's what, as Steve mentioned, that's where your buyers, that's where your customers are, and they're expecting that interaction. And I don't know if I would put it just down on the millennials. I find the trend is continuing to grow where people need instant gratification, not just in what they're trying to go for, but actually getting issues resolved. And sitting on hold for 45 minutes to an hour with a company isn't going to do anybody any benefit. So social is now that primary customer service channel in most cases.
Yeah, and there's a lot of just independent research going on. We now know that people consume about 10 pieces of content before even raising their hands to talk to a salesperson. So, you have to be on there, like I said before, if you're not, your competitors are. So now that we've established, obviously, there's value in being on social media. How can you use social media to help you achieve your business goals? What do you think, Coco?
So I think the more important question of that, and I'll answer that, but as I talk to more and more companies around the world, it's that they don't even understand what their business metrics are in most cases. I mean, I think they have a good idea of them because that's why they run a business. But when you ask them specifically what do they think social is going to help out with, they just shrug their shoulders. They don't understand that landscape at all. Right. So I think one of the best things that we can do is help them identify what that waterfall looks like. If it's traffic to conversions, like how much traffic does it take to get a certain number of conversions, understanding that waterfall, and then applying the social activities that we know of to that exact funnel in most cases, and you can start seeing the benefits almost immediately from it.
Right. And here's the key with social media. You're not really tweeting to tweet or posting on LinkedIn for the sake of posting on LinkedIn. You want to make sure, as Coca said, that your business objectives are being served by what you're doing on social. So for example, if you are looking to, generate thought leadership content or raise brand awareness, you're going to be approaching social from a completely different perspective than if your primary goal is to, generate leads or convert on those leads. So, I mean, the beauty of social media is that there's really a platform for everybody, and you can structure your social media content to serve those different business objectives, as we, I'm sure you guys do it at Hootsuite and we do at LinkedIn. So, kind of the world is your oyster there.
Yeah, and one of your objectives should be to communicate with your audience, right? It's
Absolutely.
not just a broadcast channel. It's how are you actually driving conversations with your community.
Yep.
Right. So how would you go about building an objective-based social media calendar?
So, going back to what I had said earlier, I think if you are looking at, awareness, those are reach campaigns. Yep. If you're going for conversions, that's some type of direct call to action within that campaign. There could be other things that you're nurturing through with, sponsored ads, whatever that may be, that kind of go further down the funnel. I think that when you think of an editorial campaign, you have to think of the always-on component of it.
Right.
But when you're thinking of the campaigns, it's not just one campaign. It's usually different layers of a campaign throughout a month that are achieving all of those different business goals, from awareness to lead generation to actually nurturing those prospects. Right. So I think you need to start thinking of your editorial campaign as a holistic approach, just like you do in most marketing campaigns that you produce.
Right. And I know one thing we've suggested in the past is to really have kind of honed in social media calendars or editorial calendars based on each objective. So, if you are serving an audience that wants to hear more about your brand and wants to learn more, then you're going to have a sort of a bucket of content that you can use to help serve that goal. The other editorial calendar, maybe more specific to like lead gen, is going to be helpful so that you are not really like leaving any sort of business objective behind, right? You don't want to just focus in on one specific thing if you know you have an audience that has varied needs, right?
Correct.
Right, and we know that social media is not just like I think you mentioned earlier, not just like broadcasting and not engaging.
Yep.
It's all about building relationships,
yep.
just like it is like in real life, and that takes time. So, social media and investing in it and really being an effective social media manager is time consuming.
Yep.
So how much time do you think marketers should devote to social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the timing will totally depend on how big your audience already is and how big your company is. But I think for the companies that are smaller and just starting off, in some cases they're one person and they have 3 different jobs in the company, and social is a component of that. I would dedicate an hour or 2 a day, and that's for everything. That's from curating content, that's to engaging. I mean, a bulk of the time it has to be spent, especially if you're that small, to engage with that audience. As well as a part of that time is actually building out your calendar and scheduling out those updates so that you can get your other job done while stuff is still being pushed out through your networks.
Absolutely. +1 to all of that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Well, what about, marketing automation tools that can help? I know it's like a fine line between actually being on there and engaging in real time. And then obviously you can't be on social media all day. You have other things to do. So how can you be always on?
Yeah.
And that's why we use marketing automation tools. So what are some of the marketing automation tools that you use, Steve?
So I will say, marketing automation tools are a social media marketer's best friend. So that's what's going to enable you to have that not only two-way communications dialogue, but also be posting around the clock when your audiences are listening. So you might not necessarily want to be chained to your desk at 8:30 p.m., but everybody's going to be on their Twitter feed or on LinkedIn scrolling through, and they're more likely to engage with your content. So we use a tool called Sprinkler, so that's a social media management platform. There are others out there like Hootsuite, there's TweetDeck, Coca, other...
Well, I'm going to be biased and say Hootsuite, of course. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them, and more of them are popping up every day. Like these little startups are popping up, and we're seeing them around the world. And it's because companies, small businesses and large businesses, are beginning to realize they need this technology.
Absolutely. And the beauty of the technology too is it allows for tracking and reporting that you wouldn't already have insight into. So on Sprinkler, we use a reporting dashboard that tells us everything from engagement all the way down to top performers. We'll see growth over time. So all metrics that you're going to want to send up to your boss if you're asking for more resources are going to be available to you within the pretty box of the social media management platform.
Yeah, I think, and whenever you think of automation, there's always a component of that where people shrug off and they're like, that sounds weird to me to be automated.
Right.
But I believe it's more around how you're actually using that automation.
Yep.
If you have an audience that is global, as you mentioned earlier, you don't want to be up all night scheduling that stuff out. You want to be able to show that impact. Again, going back to the ROI of what's being put out there and what's being consumed and how many leads are being generated from that. So I think the lowest barrier of entry are things like like the Hootlet, or things that quickly allow you to share stuff or schedule stuff within this social calendar of yours.
Right.
It's the automation that allows you to track the activity and flag conversations that you need to pay attention to.
Right.
So you're not having to go through a whole stream of a feed to see which ones you need to reply to. It actually surfaces that stuff up for you. Mm-hmm. And that's where automation can really help out a business.
Right. Agreed.
And what it enables you to do as well is, say you have blog posts that are publishing every day, or you want to promote webinars, or any of this more demand gen or traffic focused objectives, you're going to be able to schedule that so that goes out immediately, and you're able, as the social media manager, to focus on really engaging your community and having those two-way conversations, something that technology really can't do, at least not at this point. So
they're working on it, though.
Exactly.
Working on it.
So use your time wisely, and that's really where marketing automation can come in handy.
Yeah, it definitely helps you scale your ability to communicate. Like if
Absolutely.
you want to optimize for the conversation side of it, you can have automation and these other technologies take care of the rest of it.
Yep.
And what about tips for, like, I get asked all the time, posting cadence, time of day? I know there's not a silver bullet answer, but do you have any tips for that?
Yeah. So again, that's all going to ladder back up to your business objectives. So, if you are looking to generate brand awareness, you're going to be posting more often than, if you're looking to generate leads, or at least that's what we do at LinkedIn. You want to tell the market, hey, we're out here, these are our products and services, this is how we can help you achieve your business goals. But again, it really goes back to a lot of testing. So at LinkedIn, we do a lot of A/B testing where, we'll see, okay, if we post this at 8 in the morning versus posting it at 8 in the evening, which is going to perform better. And then based on that, based on your specific audience, you're really going to be able to optimize for better engagement.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's depending on the size of your audience. Like everybody's gonna be different. There is no silver bullet, so it's always hard to answer that question.
Yeah.
But I think you have to find a cadence that works, and there has to be a minimum number of times during a day where you actually are posting stuff.
Yep.
It always surprises me when I talk to a company, and they say we post once a day, and it's at like 6 a.m. and you're like, well, what do you do the rest of the day?
Yeah.
And all of that engagement. I mean, I think the lifespan of a social update is at max, maybe an hour or two.
Yeah.
So what do you do the rest of the day? Like you're missing out a massive amount of your audience. You have to have stuff dripping out all day long.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's different. Like we were talking earlier off camera about how it's different for every content format.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Like Twitter, it's like we do 10 to 11. LinkedIn, we do 3 to 4. So you have to think about your audience and where they're spending the most time and what makes sense for what platform.
Totally.
So I know there's a lot of smaller teams watching today who feel like they don't have a lot of resources. So can you give some tips on how you source content?
I think every team,
secrets?
I think every team always feels like they don't have enough resources, regardless of how big or small they are.
Yep.
I think what has helped me the most from a marketing standpoint is finding ways to curate content very quickly and effectively. So I rely heavily on like RSS feeds or ways of identifying trending content around a specific keyword. And that it quickly informs me to what I should be sharing with the audience that I have on my own networks.
Yep. And, to sort of build on that, the way I look at a social program, provided you have the resources to do this, is it should be, a daily communications channel that's rather unguarded, sort of an open door into your business. So it should have a touch point into everything you're doing, right? So if you're at events, if you're doing webinars, if you're posting blogs, if someone from your company is giving an important speech, that's something that social should plug into, whether it's pre-scheduled or whether you're there live tweeting and posting and taking pictures and videos. So in terms of sourcing content, you can get very creative by going to these events, by pulling from your blog, pulling from executive briefings that your execs are putting out. And like Coca said, there's amazing technologies that can help you source third-party content, so content written by individuals other than your company. So what I use is Google Alerts. So I hone in on keywords that we want to rank for, almost like SEO. So content marketing, B2B marketing, so on and so forth. And at 8 a.m. every single morning, I get like 14 Google Alerts that come in. They're totally free. And you're able to say, okay, well, this is going to be of value to my audience. I'm going to plop this into different social platforms and enhance that community.
Yeah, and I mean, I have this saying, visibility creates opportunity, and I believe that from a professional branding perspective, but I think it's even more true for companies. And the more visible you are to your audience, the more opportunities are ultimately going to come your way. I mean, that was the whole foundation of what inbound was supposed to be. Like, how do you create this channel where things are coming to you?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, we typically say, in our strategy, we say that you don't want to be the person, or you don't want to talk to the person at the party who's just talking about themselves the entire time. And we think the same should go for all of your social, your presence on your social channels as well.
It's always about adding value. That's what you have to ask yourself before you share anything is, will my audience find value in this? Because like Alex said, no one wants to sit at the party with someone who's only talking about themselves. But beyond that, people want to perceive your brand as genuinely helpful and as trustworthy. And it's really difficult in social media. People can sniff out when brands are inauthentic.
Absolutely. And I will extend off of that, and I say, you should got to add value in excess of whatever you're asking for in return.
Yep.
So if you're asking for some type of CTA where you're capturing leads, or if you're trying to sell a product online, whatever you're producing out into the ecosystem, into these networks, should be adding value in excess of whatever the price point is of whatever you're trying to sell, so that the people who are engaging with your brand or actually seeing it as not just entertainment, but information. Like there's so much more wrapped into it besides this widget or this service you're trying to sell.
Right, yeah. And I mean, speaking of like all this great content and how it should be out there and in front of your prospects, we say at LinkedIn that visual should be the new headline, or it is the new headline. You know, when you're scrolling through the feed, you want your content to be the thumb stopper, something that's really eye-catching, something that really matches the messaging or the caption that goes along with your imagery. And we also know that people remember 10% of the information that they heard 3 days later, but when paired with the relevant image, they actually remember 65%. Which is wild. So I wanted to ask you guys if you have any suggestions for online tools for sourcing high quality imagery or maybe photo editing.
Yeah, so at LinkedIn we use a number of different free tools to help us source images. So, you know, like Alex said, it's really important that when you're posting some kind of social update, you have an image that makes sense to go along with it, or a GIF, or some kind of video that really helps like bring out the the visual component and tell that story. So we use things like Pexels, Pixabay, Unsplash, Canva, and the beauty of all of these tools is that they allow you to not only find millions of images, but you're not going to have to worry about like getting sued by a photographer because you weren't allowed to use that image. So then we'll go and we'll like plop that into Photoshop. There are a bunch of free photo editing tools as well, and we'll resize it for different platforms, and we're on our way. So,
yeah, I think that list is probably pretty extensive. I mean, there's millions of images out there. I think you just double down on this idea that the world is going visual, and if it's not a picture, it's something that you photoshopped yourself, or it's something from Giphy. It's something that pulls that individual in as they're thumbing through the feed. I worked with somebody a couple of years ago who had this profound statement that they wanted our community or our audience to anticipate what our next share would be. Like, I want them to be wondering, what are they going to say next? And I think, that gets even more compounded when you start thinking of the imagery you're using with that, because that's what's actually drawing them in.
Right. And what, using consistent imagery allows you to do is something we talk about a ton in content marketing is, say you were to remove your brand's logo from your content piece. Would consumers be able to recognize, oh, hey, that's something from LinkedIn or that's something from Hootsuite?
Yeah.
And the nirvana answer for us marketers is yes. You want someone to be able to say, wow, I love this content. I'm anticipating the next thing. So totally agree there.
Or even on the flip side, when somebody sees an image, be like, oh, that looks like something that LinkedIn or Hootsuite would share.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're defining your visual aesthetic.
Yeah. You start actually building your brand just based on an aesthetic that other people are seeing out.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't even have to break the bank. Like I know our team has done, we're pretty scrappy as well, and we've done a couple of photo shoots just like internally with our marketers, just hanging around the office, and they've done really well for us too. And I think it's also a fun way to give everyone an inside look at like what it's like to work at LinkedIn and all the personalities on our team.
Is that just because we're so good looking, or what is the solve there? What's the secret sauce?
There, It's all you. It's all you.
No, but I think that brings up the great point is that you leverage your own internal employees, and I love seeing companies that do that well, because it starts breaking down all those barriers. Yeah. So I'm not just buying something from a company. The imagery I'm seeing on their website, the things that I'm seeing on their social could actually be the people I'm interacting with within this organization, because they're promoting their brand through their people.
Yeah, I mean, if I see one more stock photo of just like someone with like smiling with their hands on the keyboard, like I think I would just
the handshake photo with kind of like the bright sun in the background.
Yeah. Like the lead nurturing one with like the plant coming out of the hands. That's one of my favorites. Or sales and marketing alignment where they're shaking hands.
I know.
Those are all classics.
Incredible. And I think
use those.
Kind of an offshoot of this too around engagement is you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. So when you're communicating with a brand, think of what's going to entice you to click or share or perform some kind of social action or next step. Because, the same thing applies. We're all people. Marketing is no longer B2B or B2C. It's
H to H.
H to H. That's like the big buzzword these days. So I think that, that's something that's important to remember. What would entice you to act?
Yeah, like how many times do you look at a feed and you're like, oh, there's a stock photo, let me click on that.
Exactly.
Like it's
Zero
rare.
times.
Yeah. People like pretty things.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so talking about pretty things and things that have just like blown out of the water this year, video has blown up this year, which is no surprise. So I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about how video plays into your social strategy. Coco, I'll start with you. I know a lot of teams are concerned because it's very expensive. That's one of the challenges. Have you seen real benefits, and how does it play into your strategy?
Yeah, so I think video is blowing up. I mean, I think it's been a big deal for probably a couple of years in some fashion. It's been in the fringe, like people have been trying to figure it out. And now there's a lot of data that can, like, empirically shows where video is actually helping drive ROI. I think the idea or the statement, the challenge statement that it's just too expensive, is false.
It's fake news.
It's fake news. I believe that most people want to use that as an excuse, but the reality is I see companies all the time who are being extremely effective, and they're filming this on their iPhones or their mobile device. They don't have a studio set up. Now, it gets to a point where you want to be in a studio and producing these things, but the barrier of entry for social is so low, and it really just comes down to what you're sharing. Is there value in what it is? Most people don't care if you're putting on stone tablets, right? Like, if there's value in it, people will consume it, and because people are so ingrained with video right now, get on your iPhone, just film something for a minute and put it out there. And if the message is resonating, it doesn't matter what platform or like what the device is.
Absolutely. And I think as marketers, what we feel very comfortable with, are the tried and true lead generation channels. So blog, we love emails, we love social media. But this whole idea of video kind of makes us really nervous and scared. We're like, I don't really know how to do that. What if I look bad? What if this isn't received the way it needs to be? But I think the key here is figuring out how to operationalize video. So something we're doing at LinkedIn is we actually just started creating a video content calendar, a video editorial calendar, where we're going to give the same amount of weight to our video content as we do webinars, blog posts, so on and so forth, so that we can really not only improve professionally at this skill, but figure out what are people responding best to, and again operationalize that just like we would a blog.
Yeah, and I think you think of video, you break it into different categories, right? Like there's the quick stuff that you can throw up on Twitter, or LinkedIn now has video, or throwing something up on Facebook. But I'm seeing, even at Hootsuite within our own video cadence, like we're building in live streams, just like this, on a regular basis now, where it was kind of fun to do it every now and then because it was like out of the norm, but now it's actually part of our content plan, where these live streams, because people are actually tuning, look at all of you that are on right now. You're all tuning into this, right? So there's a ton of benefit in that. How do you? I think the question is, how do we continue to connect with this audience?
Right.
And if video is the way they're going, like find ways, push past that barrier of insecurity and put yourself out there in video.
Right.
Yeah, and I totally agree that, with the notion that it doesn't have to break the bank. Like on our team, we have this series called Indispensable Seconds, where we just whip out our iPhones, take 60 seconds of us talking about what's on the blog, what should be top of mind for marketers, and throw it up on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And it has done really well for us. And again, like it's a cool way for us to like humanize our brand and give people an inside look at all of the people, the great individuals on our team.
Right. And I think video is one of the only ways now. We talk as marketers all the time about how to cut through the noise. And I hate to say with video, you're physically making noise. But it's, at least personally, we've seen engagement off the charts with any video content we post.
Yeah, and
it's incredible.
Whenever I'm thinking of campaigns or ways to engage with our audience, I always try and look in the mirror, like, how do I consume this stuff?
Yeah.
As I'm going through a feed, regardless of the platform on my phone, as I do this on my phone, I stop at videos.
Right.
Like I'll watch that first 2 seconds to see what it's about. Maybe I'll get into it. And there have been times where I've actually gotten yelled at because I'm on Facebook and I'm going through a video feed and I just keep scrolling through more and more videos.
Yeah.
And like
you go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you go down a rabbit hole. And like video is so inviting.
Right.
Whereas when you're reading blog posts, like it's usually bouncing out somewhere else. And like there's these transitions that break that communication. But video in most cases on most of these platforms, it's just in line with whatever it is that you're interested in.
And similar to these photo shoots we're having, I think it's also important to, we found sales reps who are like so incredibly photogenic and, so amazing on camera that we're like, hey, we need to borrow you for 5 or 10 minutes to give this amazing pitch. And then we have a content piece that we can slice and dice and promote for a long time to come. So the barrier to entry, like you said, is so low. And
yeah, I mean, I find individuals that work at companies that want to do this on their own, and their companies empower them to do it. There's a guy by the name of Morgan Ingram out of Atlanta who basically gives sales tips, and he started off as a sales development rep, and now he's a sales development manager. But in that process, he started finding ways to leverage his own social networks through video to educate the masses, and now he's got this massive following in the space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to note though that you probably shouldn't make it too long. With some of the testing we've done, I think people will drop off. We were doing these 2-minute videos, and most everyone was dropping off around like 60 seconds. So do video, but don't go crazy, I guess. Yeah, or make it quick, because attention is a currency.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit. We talked about video a lot, but and which is awesome. But I want to talk about getting into the nitty-gritty of measurement and metrics, because if it can be measured, it can be improved. So shooting it back to you guys, we're going to ask, just curious, are you currently able to track ROI from your social activities? Your options are A, yes, B, no, or C, somewhat. I'll give you a couple seconds. What do you guys think?
I'm going to think that most of the audience is going to say somewhat.
Yeah, I think somewhat, it's still nebulous.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone says yes and they're like 100% confident, like I want to talk to you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to meet you. I want to take you out to dinner.
Yeah, because you're going to teach me some stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Can we get married?
Let's see what our results are. Okay, a little over half a no. And then followed by somewhat. 11% yes. Again, love to meet you. Connect
Please
with us
reach
on
out.
LinkedIn. I'd love to learn how you're feeling so confident in your tracking. Reporting can definitely be a pain point. I know that for sure. But let's dive in. So, Coca, how do you measure success? What are the key metrics that you track?
So before I get into that, that is actually astounding to me, because I think that is also the going industry analysts reports also, is that most people aren't tracking this, and it's crazy because the tools now exist. 5 years ago, that answer should be no. But nowadays, like, there's really no excuse how you're not measuring this to some level of ROI.
Right.
So how do we measure the ROI on our side? So we look at different areas. It really depends on the type of campaign. Is it to drive awareness? Is it increase that share of voice? Is it around a go-to-market campaign for a new product launch or some other feature functionality? If it's lead generation, we're trying to track everything from video views to how many clicks, how many social shares of that, because that also is a leading indicator. How many the CTAs of the blog posts or the other assets that you're advertising and sponsoring, how much traffic is going to those. What is that conversion rate? And then ultimately, how many opportunities for your company are being generated from these campaigns? Because if you can map from social update to revenue, you have a very strong story to tell to your bosses as to why you need to increase budgets.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's where a lot of marketers are having struggles right now, is they're asking for bigger and bigger budgets for digital, but they're the CEOs and the executive of the board and saying, well, how are you actually going to show an ROI? And most marketers that have been in traditional marketing for 20 plus years have no idea.
Right.
And I think, kind of going off of what Coca said about proving that ultimate ROI of, that dollars and cents of what that social post drove, it's important to almost work backwards and consider your audience not to be your boss or the chief marketing officer at your company, but to be the CFO or the person who's going to sign on the dotted line of that check. That's going to help put you in that headspace to be able to say, okay, what I'm doing can not only be operationalized, but can be monetized. Yeah. So, what we've done at LinkedIn is we have, a rather robust self-service advertising platform. So through, different tracking parameters, we were able to discern when someone clicks on a specific tweet or a LinkedIn post, and then jumps into our advertising platform to spend or to create an ad, we can see the dollar value there and then the projected revenue. And that's something we just recently discovered, which I about jumped out of my seat when I found out we could do this.
Yeah.
And what that allowed us to do is to really go back to our, our bosses, to the people who work in procurement, and say, look, there is real value in what we're doing, and it's so cost effective. All you have to do is really pay.
Hear an update.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
At Hootsuite, we track all of our leads from all the social stuff we're doing. Our blog is then, cookie and all of the other stuff. So they're already measuring that. But what's really getting fascinating to us is how we're expanding this to our employees. So we're now able to report, Salesforce is our CRM, how to track leads coming in from individual employee social updates through one of our apps called Amplify. And as they're sharing content, it's all tagged unique to them. It's all dynamic UTMs. And we're actually able to run reports and say, oh, this employee's generated 15 leads, this one's gotten 3. And when you can get to that level of granularity for your business, you're going to start seeing more success, and then it's just a matter of throwing gas on that fire.
And I think it's also really important to just mention, obviously there's the vanity metrics, the likes and the shares and the comments and stuff, but on our team we've tried to move beyond the click, and we're not optimizing for the click, we're optimizing for the conversion, because if you optimize for the click, you could actually be accidentally going in the opposite direction. So that's how our team does it anyway. As we talked about before, every audience is different. When we talked about cadence, there's no silver bullet answer, but I would find it interesting to know how your team establishes social success benchmarks.
Yeah, so I think it's, when you're in school and the teacher tells you, or there's inspirational quotes saying that, you really only are running a race against yourself, or you're beating your personal best. I could throw out what our personal best is, what your personal best is, but again, it's all going to be scaled against, how your past performance has looked. So, for example, if you're seeing a 1% click-through rate, for example, and you saw that through the entirety of 2016, if you want to say, okay, well now that's the benchmark for success. In 2017, we want to beat that by some parameter. It's important to know where you've been and where you're going, and also what your objectives are. So
that's so deep.
Yeah.
Applies to
I'll be
so
here
much
all
more.
day until 12. But
Go ahead.
I don't think I have much to add to that. I think that's the goal of it, is to find ways to measure this activity down as far as you can. And you start with the fluffy metrics, and I'm not a fan of the fluffy metrics. In fact, I used to be a huge naysayer of measuring any of that stuff, but I see it as leading indicators. Because if you can measure that well, and you can understand how to measure the stuff down the funnel, you can start then playing that game. Saying if it takes 2,000 hits to the website to get one closed opportunity, what happens if we put 5,000 hits on the website? Does that number map through? And we continue to find that the math, there's a little bit of shaking in it, but the math will work out.
Fuzzy math, we call it.
Yes, fuzzy math.
Fuzzy math.
The idea is always to work backwards too, because these vanity metrics, all of a sudden when you say, I have 500,000 followers across social, and this is the average annual return we're delivering in terms of advertising conversions or whatever your nirvana metric is, then you can go back and say, if we gain an additional 50,000 followers, this is how much that follower is worth to the business. This is their projected spend. So, those vanity metrics all of a sudden become really awesome.
Yeah, and that's what the CFO, that's what your executive team is going to want to hear. If you can show them that back planning, and you say, oh, you want me to generate 100 new leads or whatever that number is, this is what I'm going to need, and be able to explain to them what that trajectory looks like. Most times that's how their brain's working anyway, so they're going to be okay with signing off on that.
And there's your editorial calendar right there. So.
Exactly.
A big part of measuring anyway is attribution. So I know everyone loves this topic. It's great. We're going to do a little a little 101 of attribution, just so everyone's on the same page here. So first touch means that 100% of the credit came from the very first action, or the first interaction that the prospect had with your content. The last touch is that all the attribution goes to the last touch that they had. Multi-touch is a little bit more complicated, but it's the most effective because you're allocating credit to multiple touch points along the buyer's journey. So, I know, like I said, multi-touch, kind of difficult. Why do you think so many marketers are struggling with this?
So I think they're struggling with it because they just don't have the right system set up, right? I think, again, the poll earlier about, majority of the people not being able to track ROI, it's because they don't have the right system set up. The multi-touch is the ideal state. You want to get to that because then you're actually seeing buyer's journey in many cases. And if you understand buyer's journey, then you can get scientific
and you're
to how you're doing
right things.
Right. Last touch is typically where most companies fall because that's the easiest way for them to actually show some impact. I'm a fan of the first touch also, because I wanted to know as a marketer which people did I bring into our system on my own, outside of any other influence, and then kind of measuring that through it. I mean, then you start trying to figure out the multi-channel piece. But because marketers are having to show ROI, they have to measure something, and that last touch is probably the best indicator for that.
Right.
And this is where sort of your demand generation team or your demand gen marketers can be your best friends. Because I know as social marketers, a lot of times we're, the big loud personalities in the room, we're the creatives, we're the people who, can think on a dime and engage in a conversation. But a lot of times, I've found this, sometimes I don't necessarily have the head for business that, the demand gen marketer would have. I don't think of things the same way. I don't really know how, all of our campaigns are plugging into each other to that granular level. Yeah. So, I found success in just going to them and saying, hey, I have this challenge. Is there a way that you know of in your wheelhouse that we can figure out some kind of reporting structure that's going to show people, or, by people I mean us, how people are acting? If you can answer the question, they clicked on a tweet, they clicked on a LinkedIn post, what did they do next? Or what did they do before that? You should get a promotion.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we dove into, why you should be on social.
Yeah.
We dove into metrics. We talked about how to source content. We talked about attribution. Do you have just any general tips for how to optimize for better engagement on social?
Yeah.
So, I mean, outside of the paid piece of it, because that kind of makes it easier if you know you're targeting correctly. I honestly believe that one of the best ways to drive engagement is to be engaging. So find ways to drive conversations around your updates. I was on a live stream with Hootsuite a few months ago talking about social selling, which is kind of like what my wheelhouse is. And we had a decent number of people in the live stream, but we mentioned right on the screen, give us a thumbs up if you want us to move in this direction, or give us a heart if you want us to move in this direction. And we saw the engagement metrics. I mean, it was phenomenal to watch this happen.
We should do that on our next
stream.
Yeah,
my gosh.
Because all of a sudden, all those social signals started actually pushing out, which then drove in more people, because the Facebook algorithm starts promoting this content within those audiences.
Right.
So I think you just got to find ways to be engaging.
Yeah. And I think very tactical best practices at LinkedIn, we always include rich media. So that's images, videos, GIFs, something for people to like visually, latch onto. And then we also keep copy short and sweet. Yeah. So we always use short links. 2 reasons why we use short links. Well, I held up 4. Not good with math, but that's why I got into social media. So the different 2 avenues, the reason why we have those is because, number 1, you can add a bunch of tracking onto your link and then shorten it. No one's going to be the wiser. And then you also, optimize so that people aren't seeing these giant links with 3 ellipses after it, where engagement's going to drop off. So again, put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. What do you want to see? What do you want to click on? Keep it short and sweet, and always add the visual component.
Yeah, we've also found that lifting really short stats or quotes out of larger pieces of content have performed really well for us. Yeah. Whether it's, we've done a couple A/B tests where the image is the same, it's driving to the same ebook, but for one of the captions, it said 74% of B2B buyers are relying on content marketing more than ever before, and the other was just like, content marketers are going to rely on B2B marketing this year more than ever before. The stat always outperforms just the general
People
caption,
love stats.
Yeah,
because people love stats. People love sharing stuff that are easily digestible, that make them look more knowledgeable, and it's just more specific than just saying all marketers.
And again, it adds value. You're adding value to that community because people are walking away with something that they didn't necessarily know before, and that arms them to do their jobs better.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about paid, obviously, like that's a way to boost your social, but or boost your engagement, but we also have found that organic and paid play really well together, so we'll see what does well organically, and then we'll boost that on paid.
In fact, I think that's a best practice. I mean, even just outside of what you're doing, I think that's what most companies should be trying to do, is looking at their organic calendars, seeing what's performing well, and then keying off of that to throw, again, gas on the fire to push it out to a large audience. Because obviously your organic network is interested in it in some way. So how are you going to then boost it to a larger audience outside of what the normal algorithm would give it reach to?
And the beauty of paid media is that now all of these different advertising platforms have this wealth of data that you can now leverage to serve targeted advertising. To your target audience. So you're able to say, okay, I want to target this group of B2B marketers, or I want to target director plus salespeople, or whatever it is. There's a platform that's going to enable you to really reach that audience with that content.
Yeah. Or specific, like custom audiences.
Yeah.
Like literally just based on email addresses from campaigns you've been running. Yeah. Putting that in and saying, I want you to message to these people, and you can build cadences around that. So once they see this ad, you want them to see this ad.
Right.
You can get really complex into this.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd love to share a campaign example now, transitioning a little bit to specific campaign examples that you can kind of like walk us through. So Steve, I'll let you go first. If you can share an example of a campaign that your team found successful, or our team, we're on the same team, PS.
We are. We sit about 3 feet away from each other.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time together.
We do.
So I had to sit in the middle to like separate them for a while.
This is the farthest apart we've been in like a month.
I know. Are you having separation anxiety, Steve?
I am.
All right, well, we'll fix that afterwards. Okay, so can you share an example of a campaign and how it all came together for you?
Absolutely. So a big campaign for us in 2017 was called, not the Proof campaign, more of like the Proof initiative or Project Proof. We're trying to move away from campaigns and more, structure our strategy around messaging and what are the takeaways for marketers. So, we found in the market that there were a lot of studies coming out around the value of marketing on LinkedIn and how B2B marketers are finding ROI. So what we did is we lifted a lot of these third-party stats. Again, stats perform really well across social, and we threw them onto social media tiles. Some have people in them. There are others with really cool like desk shots. But the idea is to really demonstrate that ROI is serious business. So ROI serious business, and LinkedIn can really help you achieve that. So in a drip that not only went across the blog, our social channels, we had videos around it, we had a whole webinar series around it that was last season of this. So we kind of had a strategy that all laddered up to each other. But from a social perspective, what we were able to do is see a 92% increase in engagement versus our typical benchmark. Again, a benchmark from 2016 as to how we performed. And then we also saw a 10x increase in reach. So those are going to be the vanity metrics, but then if we continue to boil down, we saw a huge lift in self-service conversions just in a couple months, like north of $50,000 in self-serve bookings, and that's not even a projected number. That's just what people have spent on since they interacted with one of our social media tiles. So I think the value in all of this is figuring out, again, how does social plug into that business objective or that larger objective that your organization has, and then how do you activate that?
Right, and I think it was just an awesome way to like help marketers make the case for spending on LinkedIn, for spending more time on LinkedIn. So yeah, that was a great campaign.
Yeah.
Coca, do you have a good one you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating that both of our campaigns that we're going to talk about were around proving or giving social ROI, and that's what this session is about also. That was not coordinated. So one of the campaigns that the Hootsuite marketing team, I mean, they're brilliant. Like, social is in their DNA. They were building a campaign a lot in the same fashion. Like, how do companies, or helping companies understand what is social ROI and how do you measure it? We have a platform called Impact that then measures all of this, and through analytics will show you what that ROI looks like. So they wanted to activate our community around this. So they had 4 videos that they were publishing online through the different networks and focused on social ROI. So how do you talk to your boss? How do how are you measuring it? Like, what is the basics of social ROI? So they had these 4 videos that basically started answering a lot of these problem statements that we were getting from our customers. And what we found through that was that each of these videos then had a call to action to either a blog, a webinar that was being put onto with the same topic, or to an ebook around the same topic. And it was amazing that through this process of using video with calls to action into other assets, the other traditional marketing pieces, the results were amazing for me as an individual, but I know that the marketing team was astonished by this as well, where we got a 17x ROI. So they put, I think it was $3,000 behind the campaign itself, which isn't a significant amount of money. It's still a lot of money for most marketing teams. But it was kind of a intelligent risk, as you would call it, to put it out there. And because of the way the videos funneled into all these other assets and how they were measuring that impact, we were able to use ourselves as a case study about how you measure ROI leveraging social channels.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you were just like crowdsourcing sentiment, like literally finding your customers' questions and pain points and answering them in different forms of content. Like that's what content marketing is about, right?
Exactly.
Alleviating those pain points. So awesome stuff.
I think what it goes to show too is that the idea that social is on an island of its own is over. These campaigns were so successful just because, your team worked so closely with everyone who's running the blog, webinars, people who are producing videos, whether that's the social manager or someone else. And that's why our proof campaign was so successful too. It was getting everybody on that same ship and sailing toward a common destination. And that common destination should be, proving ROI, right?
Absolutely.
Great. We're going to run into our just for fun round. Some fire drill questions for you guys, and we'll see how it goes. So I'll ask the question. Coca, you can answer first, then Steve, and we'll just round robin it until we're done, and then we'll do Q&A. All right. So long time question: is it GIF or GIF?
It's GIF.
Is there
a question?
Thank you.
I mean, I know it's GIF.
It's I'm definitely.
That should be a poll question. Is it GIF or GIF? Like I don't exactly know what it stands. What does it stand for? The first word in that is graphic.
Graphic, interactive, format.
Format.
Yeah, graphic.
So how do you say graphic? You don't say graphic.
Traffic.
Like there's a G. It's a hard G.
Yeah. I think people just like peanut butter, maybe.
Yeah. I'm team GIF. GIF is a peanut butter.
It's true.
Okay,
I hope I get a check in the mail later from GIF
for that product placement.
Exactly. There you go.
All right. Favorite B2B or B2C company who's just crushing it on social at the moment?
I am going to say, I think the most recent campaign I saw was through Burger King. I think these CPG brands are crushing it right now because they're moving into these weird worlds where many B2B companies are afraid to move into. But Burger King just ran this campaign around Stephen King's It, the movie, where they hosted a theater full of people for an early screening. And at the last screen before it went into the credits, it just had the Burger King logo very subtly and just said, crushing clowns since whatever the year was. And I mean, obviously it's a dig at McDonald's, but I mean, amazing way of leveraging social and creating videos around this stuff.
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of that, I'd go and say Wendy's. So Wendy's, their social team has been so incredible. I think it's important for social managers and for brands to not only talk about themselves, but to insert themselves into conversations that people wouldn't necessarily expect them to
And they're inserting
join.
themselves everywhere.
Exactly. Like people tweet at them and they're like, oh, Big Mac or Whopper at Wendy's. And, Wendy's will tweet back, no thanks, or, something a little bit snarky. Yeah. And I think like for a large corporation to say that, it is incredible because to get that approved and to take that risk is huge. And it's paying off tremendously for them. So, good job there.
Or Gordon Ramsay, like he's another great example, and I'll make him really quick. Like people tweet at Gordon Ramsay photos of their food and ask him opinions, and he will tweet back and says, that looks like vomit, or what? Like he's just like he is on his TV show, but he's doing it through social with his community. Like again, get as close to the members as you possibly can.
Yeah.
People eat that stuff up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Again, there all day.
Biggest mistake you see companies making on social?
I think the biggest mistake, well, either A, they're not on it, but I'd say the biggest mistake for the ones who are on it is they're using it incorrectly, in my view. They are using it as primarily as a broadcast channel, and they're spitting out a lot of information, but they're not actually engaging with that audience. I think that is a huge miss. And the companies who are going to disrupt them are the ones who are going to start taking that audience from them by engaging with them, because that's what people want.
Right.
Brands are far too corporate on social. If you want to have controlled messaging, have a press conference and don't take questions. If you're going to be on social media, you need to personify your brand. You need to make people think that you are a walking, talking, breathing entity that has feelings and wants to help you out. So I think that's the biggest missed opportunity, honestly, is people just not being able or being willing to take those risks that you need in order to drive engagement on social.
All right, one quality you think a good social media manager should have? So
the one quality, I'll I'll say curiosity. I think that anybody professionally, you just need to be extremely curious. But I think for social media marketers, the world is changing so fast, and I get put into lists, or I get talked about like as being this expert, and I kind of shy away from that because I'm a student in this just like everybody else. As much as I've learned and experienced in my career, I am learning things every single day, and I'm having to look for this information. It's not being spoon-fed to me in most cases. So I think great social marketing is done through just a deep curiosity to what can I do next? What should I be looking at that is different than what everybody else is doing?
Right.
And I think, adding on to that, it's the idea that a social manager should not only be, kind of this big ball of personality where they're able to insert themselves in things and be humorous and witty on the turn of a dime, but also to have that head for business and for metrics, because the only way that you're going to be able to expand your role, expand your team, and get more buy-in from an executive level is if you're thinking and walking and talking like a business person the second you step off of the ownership of those social channels.
Yeah, I think so. 6 years ago, whenever it was, like 2010, when I switched from sales into marketing, I got my first marketing role. I looked at as many social marketers that I knew in my own networks, as well as other people that I just had known about. And I saw this really weird, or I guess actually concerning trend where they were job hopping like every year and a half. And I had to ask them. I had to reach out to a bunch of them and said, like, what's the reason for that? Should I expect that I'm only going to have a job for a year in this role? And they said the reason why they had a job hop was because the CEOs, the executives, didn't see the value in what they were doing, and they were the first head to get cut because they were an expense. And I believe now with this focus on ROI, like this is why people are able to keep their jobs. So to your point, you have to be business focused, you have to understand the numbers, but you also have to have those layers of creativity, whereas other people in the company probably don't. As well as the personality and all. There's a wide range of skill sets you need within this role. It's not just I can tweet.
Right, yeah, and my 2 cents too, I think, social media marketing is content marketing. It's all like one and the same, so being a really good cross-functional partner, I think, is really important.
Yes.
A campaign isn't just like a social campaign, like it goes on the blog, it's on all your different channels. You're working with the demand gen team, you're working with the ad ops team. So anyway, I think being a good cross-functional partner is very important. I'm gonna go ahead and jump to questions because we actually have 5 minutes left, and there are tons of questions.
Fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Coco, where can I go to the video example you wrote about?
I can share some links. If you, I'd say follow me on Twitter, and I will share the links right after this is over with. I have them all in a Google Doc.
Perfect.
Right,
They're in the Hootsuite Facebook feed, but it's from a campaign earlier this year. But you can still find it if you went to the Hootsuite Facebook page.
Okay, cool. Aside from LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, what are some other social media channels that organizations should be looking at to get exposure?
So I will say Instagram, especially for B2B, is becoming more and more prevalent. So as we start to think about video content, about GIFs, about different ways to promote our brands, I find that not a lot of B2B brands are doing Instagram well. So I think that's a huge opportunity for you to go in there and say, hey, I want a little bit of budget for Instagram. I want to try out these different content downloads, or a video series, or some kind of live stream situation, and run with it.
Yeah, I think the most important question is where are your customers?
Yeah.
And I think one of the first kind of tiers of social marketing is the listening piece. And so you need to know where your buyers are spending time. And I work with a lot of CPG brands, and they talk about Facebook and Twitter, but Pinterest, like it amazed me because as a B2B marketer, I never thought about Pinterest.
Right.
Like it was kind of like a tier 3 maybe, but for a lot of CPG brands, like Pinterest is their place. So you just need to go where your buyers are. We know where your customers are spending their time, and start optimizing yourself around those.
Love it.
Okay, here's a good one directed at Coco, but feel free to add your 2 cents too, Steve. I recently downloaded Hootsuite, and I'm not really sure how to use it in coordination with LinkedIn. What's the best way to engage the two?
Send me a message. I'll connect you with the team internally.
Okay.
They can help you out with all of that.
Okay. Here's a content-specific question. Do you create unique content for each social platform, or do you run the same content across platforms?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's great.
It is.
I'll let you answer that.
Absolutely. So it depends. I know that's a very nebulous answer, but I can talk about our content strategy a little bit more in detail. So we have a bunch of blog posts, a bunch of videos, a bunch of ebooks that we promote on a daily basis. So those are typically going to be hosted on other platforms. So whether that's on LinkedIn.com, on business.linkedin.com, on YouTube. So we're usually linking off to some place with relevant tracking. So I think the key for us is really changing the messaging specific to each platform. So it's about context. So we will change copy. The way we tag people is different. A lot of times, from a resourcing perspective, the content that we're creating is going to drive back to the same place. But if you're following us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, my goal is that you're not going to get fatigued. Yeah. Even if you're going to the same piece of content, you're going to be seeing a different caption or a different image that's going to add value in some way. Now, specific to video, we will optimize videos for LinkedIn, for Instagram, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think each platform has its own nuances.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can have 140 characters on Twitter, but on LinkedIn it's like 280 or whatever that may be. So you have that extra room. So in some cases, like you want to find ways to use that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a best practice. You have an ebook or a blog post, you have 3 call outs from that blog post, and those become 3 separate social updates driving to the same asset.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the way to extend the life of your content.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another good one. Is there a perfect mix for a percentage of social posts that should be about us versus our company?
There's your 411 right there.
Yeah, there's 411. So this is a pretty widely known concept in the world of content marketing, but they typically say that you want to share 4 pieces of third-party content or independent content per every piece of content you share that's relevant to you. So what this does is it basically shows people, hey, we're not entirely self-serving. We actually want to help you succeed.
Yeah, and so I think depending on your brand, like Hootsuite, for example, we produce 1, 2, sometimes 3 blog posts a day all around how to become effective social media marketing managers. So some of that is very self-serving, but I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, add value in excess of whatever you're asking for in return. It doesn't matter so much if the content is driving back to your own site, as long as that content is designed to add value and not to convert them in some way. Yeah. So I think it's the intent of that content, depending on, regardless of if it's third party or hosted on your own site. Yeah. So if you're going to have lead gen components, like that should only be one component of the other 3 or 4 that you're sharing, so that people aren't always anticipating, oh, if I click this, they're going to ask for me to download something. Whatever that is. Like you want your community to say, I'm going to learn whatever that headline is. They're going to teach me that in this.
Great. We'll do one more because I really want to help this person out, and then we'll wrap up. But so the question is, as a person who's new to this, I'm the only person at my company. Where do I start? I have no followers. I don't know what to post about or how to get people interested. How and why do people find you? So lots of questions in there, but just like general advice for someone who's like starting at ground zero.
Yeah, so I am always told by my boss, shout out to Megan if you're watching, don't boil the ocean. So I think that's something that all of us want to do. We want to post on every platform and keep a presence, and you just have to start small. Start posting once a day, twice a day on one platform, and then grow from there.
Yeah, my other favorite LinkedInism, besides "don't boil the ocean," is fewer things done better.
Oh, yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's one of those things that you just have to learn. So you understand where your audience is.
Yep.
If they're on Facebook, if they're on Twitter, if they're on Instagram, understand where they are, and then start with that one, and start learning everything you can about that one platform to engage with that audience, and then start branching off, and you'll naturally understand the nuances between those. But again, don't try going to every single social platform, because then you're going 100 miles wide and only like a half an inch deep. Like you want to get as ingrained within these networks as possible, and understand how to communicate with them.
Yeah, do the market research, find out which platform your audience is on, and then just build that one up. It's better than being on all platforms and having a okay presence.
Yeah. Totally.
All right, cool. Well, I think that wraps it up. I know there's some more questions. Maybe we'll pull together a blog post and put it on our blog to answer the rest of the questions. That was also a shameless plug for our blog. If you go to the console, you can see a button to subscribe to the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog.
Too easy.
It's too easy, man. Tons of great tools and tips on there. In addition to that, there's some other good resources on the console. Also, please stay connected with us. I believe we're going to show all of our Twitter handles. Connect with us on LinkedIn as well. Our next episode is actually going to be in November, and we're going to have a new host. So I'm going to be leaving you guys in good hands. Another member of our team, Sean Callahan, is going to take over, and he's going to rock it. So stay tuned on more details for that. And thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you all for being
guys.
here. Yeah.
And that's all. Have a great day. Hope this was helpful.
All right.